Hi everyone, it's Nicole from Life and Death in Boston, and I'm here today on a beautiful sunny winter day, and I've decided to go for a walk in Mount Auburn Cemetery, which happens to be near my house, and it is the oldest garden cemetery in America. So it's a beautiful place to go, and today seems like the best day for it. So I thought you might like to join me. Let's go. Here we are at the entrance on Mount Auburn Street, and this is the Egyptian gate. There's been an Egyptian style gate here on Mount Auburn Street since a year after the cemetery opened, so 1832. But the first one was made out of wood, painted gray, if you can believe that. So I guess some people complained at that time, said it really wasn't up to what the standards they were hoping to see at the cemetery would be. So about 10 years later, they built this granite gate, and they paid about $10,000 for it, and it still stands today as the main entrance to the cemetery. Now across the street is a building that has always intrigued me, and that is this currently headstone store, I guess you'd call it. But from what I understand, it used to be owned by the cemetery as well, and it was used as sort of the reception building. So if someone had a funeral, that is where they would meet before they went into the cemetery. And also during the winter months when the ground was very hard, frozen solid, that's where they store the bodies. Here's a look at the Egyptian gate from inside the cemetery. You can see it a little bit better than you could from Mount Auburn Street. And as we come into the cemetery, you can see the two chapels that are part of the buildings on the site here. We've got Story Chapel here at the entrance, and then up on the hill you see Bigelow Chapel, every Goth's dream home, up there in the distance, and we'll take a closer look at it here in a few minutes as we walk up that direction. But the cemetery is still very actively part of the community, and they have a lot of tours and events here, and many of them take place in these two chapels as well. We're going to take a walk towards the chapels now. Not every cemetery has a sphinx, but here at Mount Auburn they have one that is actually a Civil War monument built in 1874, and it stands right in front of the beautiful Story Chapel in a lovely garden cemetery. In fact, today is just a spectacular day to be here, and I'm looking forward to showing you this cemetery under the snow. When Mount Auburn Cemetery was founded in 1831, it came about because the churchyard graveyards in Boston had become very full, and people were worried about the sanitary conditions. So they decided to set aside a big piece of land right outside the city that they could turn into a beautiful garden-like cemetery where people could also come for picnics and to spend the day. And in its prime in the 1840s, it was one of the most popular tourist destinations in America, right up there with Niagara Falls and Mount Vernon. And you can see why. It's pretty beautiful even today. What I love about it is even though we're in the middle of the city, you can walk around here and barely see another person, even on a beautiful day like today. So let's see some other great sights in this cemetery. coming up now on one of my favorite places in the entire cemetery. Should be just around this curve. It's a little hard to find. Especially in the snow. But here we are, we're coming up on what is called Consecration Dell. If I don't slip and fall into the frog pond. Here we are, beautiful Consecration Dell. This is the place where on September 24th, 1831, they had the ceremony to consecrate the ground for a cemetery. And to this day, they have tried to maintain the woodland look, the original trees and types of foliage that would have been here in 1831. Even though the rest of the cemetery is more like an arboretum with a variety of foliage and trees from around the world, they've maintained the old growth of trees that were here in 1831. I don't know if they're the same trees, but they're certainly descended from them if they're not. And you can see the headstones in the distance that will really give you a sense of the scope and the size of the trees that are in here. That little frozen pond is also home to salamanders and frogs, turtles, that you'll see most of the year. And if you come down here in the summer, you'll also be bitten by many mosquitoes, but it's worth the trek. Beautiful Consecration Dell. Stopped here at Auburn Lake, which is one of my favorite parts of Mount Auburn Cemetery. It's really hard to believe this is a lake right now with the snow on it. And it's almost like two ponds connected by that bridge. If you go along the side of the lake towards that bridge, you then find sort of an equivalent pool on the other side. But along the side are crypts, beautiful crypts, and some of them have well-known or famous local residents buried in them as well. And we will come back and visit those on another day because it really deserves a video of its own. But I wanted to stop here and show you this. We'll visit it in all seasons because this is just such a beautiful view at Mount Auburn Cemetery. Here's another one of the structures at Mount Auburn. This is Washington Tower, and it is situated on the very highest peak in the cemetery. It was built in 1854, and if you climb to the top of that structure, you'll be able to see an incredible view of the city of Boston, not to mention also the cemetery itself. And it's of course closed in the winter for safety's sake, but we're still going to go up to the summit and get a better view, and we can also see a view of the city from there as well. I'm going to spare you the climb so you don't have to hear me huffing and puffing my way up the hill, so we'll meet you at the top. We made it to the top. Here we are at the top, the summit with Washington Tower, and again, in better weather, you can go to the top of the tower and it's quite a view. However, it's not too bad even from the summit itself. As you can see, I hope I didn't make anybody too dizzy with that turn. But here we are overlooking the beautiful city of Boston. A lot of tourists don't know about this incredible view and Mount Auburn Cemetery itself, but we're only 4 miles west of the city of Boston here at Mount Auburn. And really, if you haven't been here and you make it to our city, I highly recommend this as a stop on your visit. That's the tour for today. I hope you've enjoyed our little walk through Mount Auburn Cemetery, and we'll be visiting here again in future videos, as well as some other places in my hometown. Hope you've had a nice time, and see you next time.